I was debating starting off singing or something different, but
Oh like, yeah.
Oh! And you still have you seen the double Dutch bus yet? We're gonna just quickly before.
No, man. I told you, like, it's not a thing. You're trying to make it a thing. It's not.
I'm trying to make it a thing. Everybody, just spam them. Double Dutch bus. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Wake Up and Deliver Season 3, Episode 9. Apologizing for last week. I know we've been doing this bi-weekly lately, but
that's true, eh?
It's just something that it's just, shit happens as they say. Thank you for everybody for joining us.
Mondays are rough, guys. Mondays are rough.
Mondays was a holiday, was Easter, this, that, everything else. Like we can just keep trucks were running late. I was around the corner. It was just taking a little bit longer. On that note, welcome again to another Wake Up and Deliver with John and McClymont. I don't know why I always feel awkward saying your last name. And
probably because you say it wrong, actually. But yeah, that's
McClymont. McClymont.
Well, no. McClymont, just like in general, very smooth. It rolls off the tongue. Like all my people in Scotland are like, look at this guy.
Like, where's this guy? We're gonna beat him.
Yeah, exactly. And then they see the name, they're like,
Yeah, another meathead. Hey, on that note, Straits of Hormuz potentially getting blockaded again, already blockaded or whatever else. But on that, we wanted to talk a little bit about that because I sent this cool video to John. We thought it would be kind of neat to share it.
Oh, you still have it? Okay, good.
I got it prepped.
Oh, look at you!
I think it's super cool because it's going to hit that date that it talks about in the video, so it's very relevant. So I'm going to play it now. John's going to react like he's watching it for the first time, and here we go. Let me know if you can hear the sound.
This is an oil tanker.
Yeah,
you hear the sound?
The thing to know about an oil tanker is that it's really, really big. 4 soccer fields long, carries 2 or 3 million barrels of oil, and it weighs more than a skyscraper, all of which makes it slow, 10 or 15 knots. That is, no joke, the speed of a bicycle. Our global energy supply lines move at the speed of a Schwinn. And let me show you on this globe why that's important. If you biked all day, how much of this globe do you think you could cross? Like maybe the width of the point of this pen, right? Maybe. You worked really hard. Okay. Now imagine hopping on your 12 speed starting in Dubai. Where's Dubai? Here we go. Starting in Dubai. And now imagine that you have to bike out of Dubai all the way down.
Sorry, what'd you say, John?
I said he's on point with his geography. He found it right away. Anyways, let's go.
Down here, down the coast of Africa, down, across the Cape of Good Hope, back up the other coast of Africa, all the way across the Atlantic, through the Caribbean, before finally arriving at the deepwater oil port in Louisiana. That would take forever on a bike, right? Which, remember, is the speed that these oil tankers go. Like, that is how our oil travels, as if it were on a bike. And maybe you see where I'm going with this.
This is key.
This is a map of global oil flows put together by JP Morgan. Don't worry about all this text. We'll explain it in a minute. These red lines show the oil coming out of the Middle East, going out to the rest of the world. This is the stuff that's been cut off. Here it is back in December before the war. There it goes. The oil is flowing. But remember, it moves at the speed of a bunch of bicycles. So now it's January, and the oil is just finally reaching parts of Asia and Europe. And we're into February before it hits the US, and then it hits refineries in South Korea that then sends it on down these pink lines to Australia and New Zealand. So when the war starts and the oil stops flowing, there's actually still a ton out there, taking its long, lazy little bike ride around the globe. That's a big part of why things seem weirdly normal. For most countries, the oil shutdown has not reached us yet. We're still getting shipments that were sent out before the war started. So when do those shipments stop? If you look at that map again, it says most deliveries to the US will stop around April 15th. In Europe, they stop around April 10th. Asia, April 1st, so it's just getting started. But here in parts of Africa, there's March 20th. We're already well into it. And that's even hitting places like the US, where we are still receiving oil from before the war started. Countries whose shipments ran out are creating this big surge in demand. So anytime you go to the pump or pay your power bill, you are bidding against them and they are bidding against you. And all of this is going to get significantly worse when China and Europe start running out of shipments too, and surge demand to replace it, which is really close to happening. This is an
So why that's important? As of what, a couple of days ago, Ireland was already talking about how they have no.
Well, why you shouldn't be picking Ireland. Ireland's got their own problems with it right now.
It's part of Europe, right? Like I'm just saying, Europeans. April 10th, we're close to that marker. You're already seeing gas prices in, I think it was Germany, at like €6, something ridiculous. We're 3 days away from the last shipments coming into North America.
Yeah, I agree. So I was fact checking because the first time you showed me that video, I just want to make sure that
you're fact checking.
Yeah, I just
send you your fact, John. We have an underlying agreement that we don't fact check.
Not so much fact checking, but like just because of the fact that like one of the things that he's saying right away is that like I think he unfortunately creates a little bit of a confusion where he's like, ooh, if you biked all day, like maybe you could do half the width of the pen. And like he's not really highlighting the fact that like I think he does say it somewhere in that video. Maybe I just because I'd seen it before, I knew he was going to say it. He says it takes around a couple of months, right, for like these tankers to sort of come around and do that journey. So some people might be like, well, if I can only move this, you know, even if I had 60 of these things, I'm not making up all of that distance. So just to put some of that into perspective, like yes, it can move at the speed of a bike, but he's talking like sort of 15, 16 knots is around 15 miles per hour, 18 miles per hour, something like that, which is about 25 kilometers an hour. So now only because at one point in my life, I was far healthier than I am these days. And I actually used to track all of these activity metrics. If you're going 20, 25 kilometers on a bike, like, you know, you're going 25 kilometers an hour on a bike, like you're actually working hard. So it's just to put, like, I shouldn't say hard, but you're not just casually rolling around your neighborhood. So that's all I'm trying to highlight for everybody who maybe thinks that there's some BS on that video. But like, if you put it into that perspective of like 18 miles an hour, 25 kilometers an hour, and then you say, hey, 2 months at that speed, essentially nonstop, 24 hours a day, this thing is just rolling or floating, I guess. You know, that's where it comes from. And then what you end up doing is that you get this staggered supply. So the interesting thing is, and we had talked about this before, was the fact that the real problem hadn't happened yet. And I think in all fairness, the recent tension and urgency around quote unquote making a deal is 100% because this problem is about to become really evident, like really, really evident for everybody, that the oil is now actually not on its normal sort of supply chain anymore.
So you can see, this is maritime traffic. I love this. I don't know how often you go on this thing. I go on this all the time. Just this one and the plane one I go on often. And you can see all the oil tankers. The red is all the oil tankers just bunched up and waiting to be able to cross. Same as on this side trying to come back in. And there's still obviously tankers moving because it's not every single oil. It's only, you know, 20% of the world's oil moving, but it is the cheapest, lightest oil. You know, we talked about Venezuela, how they have, you know, more Venezuelan oil now. It's a hard kind of oil. There's oil up in Canada. It's a very, very hard oil to extract. It has to hit about $150 a barrel for it to be economical to use that oil. So, you know, us in Canada, we're waiting till it hits $1.50 because it's going to benefit us as the economy is going to start surging from the oil fields, right? But
yeah, so there's a lot there. But I mean, if you think of any, think of any operation, any factory or whatever, if someone was like, hey, you just need to improve your performance by 25%, I think everyone appreciates that that's a pretty impactful number. And if all of a sudden you lose 20 to 25% of your capacity, also people generally understand that's a pretty impactful number. So, you know, to Matt's point, even though this stuff is moving, there's a big dent in there now because, like, for example, that 20-25% that was covered out of the Middle East, for example, is now getting that sort of supply and demand tension elsewhere. Hong Kong is a great example. Hong Kong actually, and he says in that video, and you see it in the pricing, they had lost their supply chain, their supply, sooner than we did from those areas because of the fact they were closer. It was like, you know, like they had already lost it around, you know, the end of March or whatever. Prices for gasoline in Hong Kong have gone up over 100%. Like they're sitting at like something like 440, I think 410, so 410 a liter, which would be $16 16 something a gallon, almost, like for to put that into an American perspective. So it's literally doubled since this has started. And now when they need oil and they start saying, well, we're still willing to pay more than not having it. So, for example, in these, it creates this whole supply and demand tension now with all of these countries. Ireland's a good one. You brought that up too, right? Where they're protesting, they're actually blocking the reception of oil, which is making the problem worse, which is going to further kind of then force them to pay either higher prices to bring it in or do some more stuff. So, like I said, we've talked about this before, but this kind of intricate supply chain and I just can't wait until you hear the commentary, like kind of like was around COVID. I mean, like, oh, you got to nearshore it. That's the problem. It's like, it's not really the problem, because the thing is that, to your point, a lot of these things don't make sense unless there's a certain economy of scale. Like the US and even Canada could have refineries all over the place. So could other parts of the world. But the reality is there's this really insane tension between the fact that the more capacity you have, and then essentially the cheaper you have to essentially do it for, it makes the activity less worth it overall. It's really strange. It's a really strange kind of inverse relationship that way.
And we also remember this is a compounding effect. So it's not just, hey, the gas pump prices, it's the trucks, the tankers themselves, the plastics that are utilized on all the electronics, the plastics that are utilized on planes, on cars, and everything else. Everything nowadays has petrocarbons in it in one way or another, and that price is going to increase in certain places more than others, right?
So we just pause for a second there, because plastics is such a good call out when you think about, well, what's an impact to this, like for a lot of retailers, let's say, at the most fundamental level, your strategic sourcing and stuff like that, like all your most raw base material cost now is going up, not just in transportation, but in actual fabrication, despite the fact that, like, it's not that stuff doesn't exist. It's not like all of a sudden, a component is no longer available on the planet. It's just that the supply and the ability to get it at a price that then was aligned to all of those other decisions is no longer true.
So now we have this kind of unique situation happening in the world that I don't think we've ever seen. We're having these constant compounding affecting our supply chain. It was COVID, and then there was this, and then it's that, and it's this, and it's that, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the whole system. And nobody really knows what's going to happen. You're seeing surge pricing here, obviously in Canada, United States. You're seeing pricing all across, starting to increase on just the basic needs, on transportation costs, on sourcing, and then there's other volatility that's happening. And it's very hard to predict. So what do you do in this scenario, John? Like, as a person who sources transportation, you go to your transportation provider and go, well, I'm paying you line haul plus fuel. The fuel is up. That should be enough. And the carrier comes back to be like, listen, man, your extra 60 cents on the liter is not enough when it's tripled at the pump. It doesn't cover the actual cost, right? Because as to our point that we talked about a long time ago, it's a cake. It's a margin. It's not really the cost of fuel that you're covering on that line haul portion. It's just the subsidy to help with the volatility. It's not the true cost of it, right? Yeah, exactly. And it's going to cause a lot of rejected contracted rates. And we're coming into contracted rate season where all these new contracts are going to get put into place. And when people bid back in December, which are just going to get activated now, they're going to come back to their suppliers and be like, sorry, man, I can't do this. The supplier's going to be like, why? You're going to ruin the relationship. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm just not going to be able to afford it. I'm going to go under if I do it. And you're seeing people go under those stressful situations currently.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, you know what I mean? You see, and to add even more tension to it, now you're getting the businesses that can or that have the ability that are actually chasing revenue quality. So revenue quality now is becoming, the next big thing, which, you would think that it always makes sense. But the reality is, like, pretty much every retailer, e-com brand, service provider, like everybody does a certain portion of their volume, like closer to closer to cost because, you know, you want to have a sort of foundation. You need some foundational customers. You need the activity to get the wheels rolling, to get the machines running. And you know what I mean? Like, and then you end up having these higher revenue quality things later. But now everybody is starting to look for quality of revenue, which means that you're getting like essentially people turning down services, which then inherently is going to make it even more expensive for you because to get anyone's attention, you're going to be paying premiums and stuff. So it's really a nasty situation because it's just, it's one thing after another. And I think to your point, the companies that have too much complexity, like, and that we're able to get away with like a lot of like weak execution on high complexity are really going to get burned. Like really going to get burned.
Well, the one thing that you got to also remember is increasing of oil prices is inflationary, but it is also a systemic pressure on the system where it erodes credit and trust. So the government is in a position where it can't put liquidity back into the field to help people become more active in it. Because as soon as it starts quantitatively easing the money and printing more of it, it's going to create more inflation. So then it's going to create hyperinflation. So you can't do that. But then at the same time, you can't constrict it because inflation is going to start, you know, putting a lot of people out of business and it's going to start killing a lot of jobs and it's going to slow the whole economy. And it's going to create stagflation, which is not what you want either. So in the next few months, you're going to see a lot of precarious, a lot of like situations where people are just panicking and not knowing what to do, and especially with their work. So do they cut labor? And that's why you're seeing such an exodus to this AI. Hopefully, it solves some of that labor problem for people that I can reduce some headcounts and maybe I can still stay afloat. But that's causing issues as well because it's not the answer. You cutting off people because of AI. It's still not there to be able to supplement those individuals. So you're going to create another snowballing effect for yourself.
Well, the other thing I saw a really great comment somewhere today. I apologize if it was on somewhere on LinkedIn or whatever it might have been. I don't know if you noticed, I've been writing a little bit again lately, like more than I had been. So I might have seen it there. I might have seen someone else, but you know, one of the things is that the problem with AI is that it doesn't really know what good looks like. And, you know, one thing that I've been kind of just dabbling with more to keep myself current than anything else is playing with some of these sort of like, you know, agentic workflows and testing these and seeing how they work and stuff like that. And look, for as crazy, amazing as these things are and just absolutely wild in terms of execution, like I can see it's already making mistakes. Now I don't care because I'm only like, essentially it's like a test case. We're just, you know, kind of staying current and testing some of these things. Like I don't really care what the results are, but if like my business was running on some of these transactions, it totally doesn't make sense. You know, the other thing I saw recently was like, you know, people now over leveraging AI where it's like, ooh, I'm going to, you know, create this SOP, create this document, create this, create that. And it's like, this thing looks good. Like it looks good, but there's like fundamental issues in here.
There's no substance.
Well, no, but if you were actually following it, like you actually can't do some of the things that it says to do. And then even if you do it, it's like, it's really unclear that this part is technically true, but doesn't happen in the same way as these three things. And this one actually has to be done a really specific way. Now, everyone's going to kind of jump on it and be the fact that like, oh, well, you know, that's the prompts or the instructions or this or that. And it's very true. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have this tension. If you're going to write really amazing instructions and if you're going to build really great guardrails around the system, someone has to know that first to be able to do it. But then more importantly, what happens if you don't have the people anymore to be able to tell you what good looks like? You know, and you're just getting the answer. So I think that there's some real tensions there, which I thought was funny because you're even seeing like big retailers like the Gap being like, oh yeah, we introduced this new AI platform to increase visibility and quality management and supplier collaboration and all of these things. Yeah. It's like, if that's like lipstick on a pig for talking about the fact that like, you know what, like we're sending less emails and it's doing better summaries for us, maybe. But I mean, like, you know, one day it'll make decisions, so to speak, or make highly, you know, relevant recommendations. But I still think we're a little bit of a ways from that. And trying to cost cut your way to prosperity at the expense of investing in the future, like it just will not work. It never has worked. It will never work for anyone.
It's funny to see some of the earlier adopters of AI have now gone full circle, and you've seen them rehiring the positions they cut out
Yes,
2-3 months ago, which is very, very ironic in its own way as well. So you're seeing people, these customers are like, oh, we took on AI early, we cut 16,000 jobs, and now they're like, oh, we're in a massive rapid hiring, and it's for the exact same jobs they cut, because they notice those positions that you talked about. The creativity is gone, the thinking of what is good and bad. That gut feeling that you have is gone as well, and that collaboration with other systems on a fundamental level is gone as well, right? It's not as straightforward as we'd like to think. Chaotically, we created the system, and chaotically we work with one another, and we know how to work one another. We can read facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. AI systems still have a challenging time understanding the difference. Like the one thing I sent you the other day, they pit a couple of AIs against each other, and almost all of them end up in nuclear warfare.
Wow. I told you that story, that one was, it's the first, there's a couple of times that one's come out. I mean, honestly, that one's not surprising. It's like, well, it solves the problem as effectively as possible. You know what I mean? And then
just jump to the point, right?
Yeah, it just gets into a mess. But it's like, so, I think we started the year saying that we thought 2026 was going to be like a real rough year, and it's continuing down that path. And then with all of these other sort of tensions and challenges, you continue to get other things, right? Like you've got UPS and FedEx adding more surcharges. You've got USPS that's doing emergency rate increases and not paying pension funds, for example, to try to keep up and not essentially just hemorrhage and be able to keep the services running. And you've got Europe that in a couple of months is essentially ending their de minimis type program, just like the US did a year ago. That one's starting July 1st. So, a lot of people that have been able to get away with very loose operating systems and very like fringe understanding of what it really takes to get things done. I think, unfortunately, the back half of the year is going to suck.
I completely agree with you. I think we called it. I think we called it correctly at the beginning of the year. 2026 is not going to be better. I know everybody was hoping for a better 2026. Like buckle in. Focus on your niches. Downsize. If you think it's a year of growth, maybe look at paying off more equipment. Get yourself in a better cash stable, ready position, whether you're a warehouse or transportation, logistics, 3PL, a manufacturer. I think all those things matter. Reducing your SKU counts, reducing the amount of things you have available, because those supply chains of where you're buying those things are going to get rocked. And you got to have a very clear understanding of what makes you successful and focusing on those things.
I agree, dude. It feels like it feels like supply chain in general needs to take a lesson from like the food frugal type people, where it's like, how can I use everything of what I have? You know what I mean? To kind of get the most impact for it. Just because of the fact that I think like, a lot of those nice to haves and stuff. And I made some comments on a few threads over the last couple of days where it's like, the biggest mistake that most e-com brands especially do is that they try to expand too quickly, or they continue to try to launch new products, right? Because they fell in love with the product cycle of like, I've got a new product. Ooh, look at the splash. Oh my God, people are buying it. And they kind of think that then they can do, unfortunately, a lot of e-com brands, especially retailers as well, but this is like really, really impactful for young e-com brands, is that they seem to think that when they had a first like kind of attention getting product or sort of like foundational product for their business, that launching a new product, i.e. doing something that's very similar but like different, so different size of packaging, different color, different flavor, whatever it could be, doesn't matter, that's tantamount to the same sort of release that they got, that same propelled activity they got from the initial launch. And it's really not. Like, there's a real difference between releasing new novel products or products that legitimately solve problems versus line extensions. And a line extension will never perform the same way. And, you end up usually trying to push just as much out, to get a line extension done, but you don't see double the sales. It's not a one-to-one relationship or anything like that. And that's probably the biggest mistake that so many of these I like to say high potential or great potential brands have, and then they peter out. Like Allbirds was a great example. They had one product, like the wool shoe, whatever, and they wrote it and they tried to blow up. But as they continued to just expand the line, it was all variants of the exact same thing. Like, yeah, you could get a little different color. There was a slightly different style or whatever, but the core value proposition from the original product never really changed. So it's like, well, now you have 500 things and you're selling a little bit of all of them, but not enough of any of them to actually survive.
And no efficiency because you've eroded that efficiency because you made your SKU so widely, was so wide that it just doesn't make sense anymore. I had to put on some light. It was getting a little bit dark, and your comment earlier was just eating away at my head.
I told Matt it looks like he was in his parents' basement.
But another great example of that was when Prime Water came out. Everybody, you couldn't find it anywhere. It was like they couldn't manufacture it fast enough. And now it's just like nobody's buying it, right? Because
oh my god, like it's like propping up shelves at the dollar store.
Yeah, and then there's so many different variations. They're trying different things to lure the kids back to it because it was very focused on the youth, and the youth have just grown out of it because it's like that instant oatmeal kind of aspect of it, and they moved on to the next thing that they're focused on, right? So that product, like you're talking about, that product launch, that kind of ideology of what you really want to focus on. And you think you can bring the next one that's really cool. I don't think it's the year for it. Same as if you're thinking about providing a brand new service because you want to experiment a little bit, maybe hold off. On the other flip side, I think merger and acquisitions might be an interesting way to grow instead this year. If you're a company looking at buying other products to help complement what you do, if you have that kind of cash flow, because you're going to get really great value for a lot of great companies. We're looking to exit because they are worried what's happening. They're tired.
Yeah.
So whether it's a transportation company, if you're a private label and you want to find a nice little regional LTL carrier that help supplement what you're doing and expand on that, might be an idea. Verticals and horizontal acquisitions, always the best way to do it. Or even a product that complements you, right? So if you're an LTL carrier and then you want to get into reefer LTL and you know someone else that does it, get into multi-temps, that's a way to kind of approach it, right?
Yeah.
I think warehouses are still going to be king in the coming year. Everybody's going to keep stocking on inventory. I think anybody in position with warehouse space, it's still going to be a very good year for 2026. And what do you think on that? Do you think that's correct, John?
I think it can be. I think the markets you're in matter, unfortunately. So I think that, it's kind of like a caveat. If you're in the right kind of space and you can do the right kind of things, for sure. Do I think that someone who, like, for example, opened a warehouse, in the Midwest or like in the middle of like the Canadian prairies is going to
Saskatchewan?
No. I wasn't going to name names, but I was actually thinking Saskatchewan as an example. But I don't think that would matter. I think you have to be in the right place to do the right kind of thing. I think the more interesting thing is, to your point, is that I'd be more interested. And I've shared this with a number of warehouse providers, is that you guys are paying for the building, you have the racking and stuff like that. But I find the dock space, the potential for cross docking and for delivery loadouts that aren't their own activity, and just doubling down on the square footage they have to generate additional revenue from the fact that the building is essentially paid for other things, I think is a huge area of opportunity that I honestly haven't heard of anyone doing it well, to be quite honest with you. So there you go. There's my tip.
Ghost kitchens, but ghost warehouses. You have a 9 to 5. You open your warehouse or you open up your dock in the middle of the night. A lot of trucks need a lot of cross docking at nighttime, and it's just simple, short revenue that you can kind of generate. But on that note,
I was watching. I know. I was waiting to see if you would notice.
You guys can't see it, but we always point. We're not pointing up. We're not pointing up to the big guy, but we're pointing up to the time because we're very conscious because we missed last week. We want to be still very conscious of your guys' time. John, final thoughts, or were those your final thoughts?
No. My final thoughts were that you got a pro tip right there about the ghost. Well, let's coin that one. We're going to trademark it. The ghost docks, the ghost warehouses, ghost warehouses.
John and mine's next venture that we're going to do. We're going to do some ghost warehouses, and you're going to see little ghosts coming across our screens to help promote it silently.
There you go.
On that note, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Again, we apologize for not being here next week. For those who tuned in, as always.
Last week, you're trying to tell people we're not here next week. Jeez.
No, last week, last week.
Guys.
Sorry, it's the year. The year of stress has caught up to me.
What do the kids say? You're cooked.
Yeah, on that note, I'm gonna end that.